Hey everybody, so I had a question posed to me about how I like to thin my paint. And just to give you a quick video here, these are all Tamco intensity colors that I transferred from, my nice big cans here to these little bottles to make them easier to deal with, because we're mixing into a little teeny reservoir like that. This is what I would consider just like a standard. So I like to be able to get little droplets and stuff out of here. So just to give you an idea of how I mix my stuff, you can count the droplets if you want. I usually just kind of eye it up. And because this stuff has so much pigment in it, I'll start off with something like this. I'll get my finger on the end here and kind of mix it up like that, and move it around and swish it around the airbrush in there. The thing is that because the paint is heavier than the thinner, it will want to sink to the bottom and get down into the needle and into the tip. So while I'm blowing back into the airbrush and bubbling things and getting it all to mix, I'm also gonna, blow out a lot of that thick stuff that's way up into the tip, and keep kind of moving it forward and backward through the gun so that it all gets mixed. Okay, this is with a Peak C5, which is basically it's basically an Iowata Eclipse. I just like them better because they're much less expensive. And you can see here how you see a little bit of chalkiness, and it's spotty. I'm barely pulling back on the trigger, and you hear the whistle, and then it spits, and then a little bit more comes out. That's because the paint inside the airbrush isn't totally reduced. It usually takes 5 to 10 minutes for the consistency to be consistent in all over, where you don't have bits of chunks and things like that. And it's like that with all airbrush colors. But I mean, you can see, like, just right from here, you can see how intense the color is, and how little I had in the airbrush versus how much reducer I had. Which, and I've said it before, and I'll say it here again, that is the real bargain. See, it's going to take a couple of minutes for this to work itself out. Okay, so I've let my over-reduced white sit for a couple of minutes, and I've even over-reduced it a little bit more. I put a couple more drops of reducer in there and bubbled it around and mixed it around and let it sit. So what I've got here is basically like a shading white. And I wouldn't let you can kind of see how wet it is. If you can see how wet it is right as the paint hits the panel, and then like immediately dries. I don't know if you can see this white might be coming across more intense on the panel than it does in actual real life, but the reason why I like to get it to this consistency for illustration purposes, sorry for the jiggliness, I'm trying to do this with two hands and not touch the screen and see what I'm doing. The reason I like it like this is because it's a nice shadowy white, and you can kind of fuzz in your illustration and get a good idea of like where your light's going to come from, and set up your illustration just so, and start it off with a gray, and then as you want to go in more intense and flesh out more stuff, you can. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but when I go to judge an illustration color, I always start with the color white. And the reason why is because the way the pigments are made for each different color, it's going to come from some different natural resource. And when it comes to white, you're dealing with a chalky, talky substance. So you basically have pulverized rocks that are all colored white inside your airbrush, real fine dirt particles of white. And they have the tendency, they get chalky before any other color gets chalky, and they spit, and it's harder to get them nice and smooth. And that's why, if I can get the white to work just right, then I can get all the other colors to work just right. I don't know if anybody's familiar with pinstriping, but like one-shot black can be greasy, and you have to work with it, and you kind of got to know the attitude of all the different colors. When I was airbrushing t-shirts, I always knew that purple was gummier in humid weather more than the other colors. But white is always the most difficult, just because of the nature of what makes up the pigment. So that's why I like to get the white right first. But you can see, I don't know if you can see, this is pretty intense under the camera light. It's got a nice, it gives you a nice ability to build up your shadows and your shading and get them real specific.